Guys, you may be wondering why I'm at a cathedral. And I ask myself the same thing a lot of the time. But today we're here to pay our respects to Chris Froome and Geraint Thomas, former Tour de France champions, in heaven as on earth, because the holy trinity of Team INEOS, Egan, Bernal, Chris Froome, Geraint Thomas, the Father, the Son and the Holy Spirit have been slashed at the Tour de France. The trident we all thought was going to happen is now just going to be Egan Bernal. So with this new INEOS lineup, it's time to send our prayers and to analyse who's going to be on their new roster, because this is an absolutely unforeseen announcement from Team INEOS. But let's go somewhere more comfortable to talk about that. We all know what Bernal can do. He's the reigning champion after all. Let's just remind ourselves of the Col de l'Iseran stage of the Tour de France, where he just absolutely destroyed the peloton. But Bernal, let's just recall, pulled out of the Dauphiné with that mysterious, almost supernatural back injury, where he just suddenly appeared to not be in the race anymore. It's really bizarre for Bernal to do that. But now coming into the Tour de France, surely this is his peak for the year. And he's been looking pretty good, like, ish. For Bernal's form, it's been okay. Tour de l'Ain, he came second, and he was still contending on a lot of the stages. But the Rue d'Occitane, back right after the COVID break, really showed that Bernal can still climb at the same pace that he could 12 months ago. Maybe now at this Tour de France the caliber's slightly higher, but Bernal's still a massive contender. Let's not look past that. Here's the man I like to call face piece. This is probably the biggest surprise, because he just has been switched from his Giro d'Italia plan now to the Tour de France. And everyone expected Carapaz to not be going for the Tour de France. The first time Carapaz has ever ridden the Tour de France, and it's quite different to the program that he expected to ride. He looked good in Poland when he won that stage, in exactly the same manner that he won that Giro stage 12 months ago. But now he had that crash. He didn't look quite as good at the end of Poland, but he's still Richard Carapaz. He's still a Grand Tour champion, and the Equatorian surely will want to do this. Dave Brailsford did say that Carapaz was still going to be one of the leaders for the yellow jersey. So the trident maybe the trident's now going to become a two-pronged attack with Carapaz and Bernal, because Bernal had that mysterious back injury, and now Carapaz is trying to go for it as well, but he's also somewhat injured. It feels like at the moment INEOS don't have anybody that is on form. Okay, this is someone that I really like to talk about. So this is the real backup rider for GC, let's be real. SIVAKOV is probably one of the strongest guys at INEOS right now. Even Geraint Thomas said that he was the biggest threat on the team right now. And I think that SIVAKOV is probably going to be one of the strongest people supporting Egan Bernal through this whole race. He might do what Bernal did back in 2018 and be the helper, the really strong helper, and probably come on the cusp of top 10. But SIVAKOV is such a good rider. He's proved himself, the Giro d'Italia. But let's not forget, this is the man who has more citizenships and nationalities than Grand Tours ridden. He's still extremely young, but the Russian is a real engine. He crashed at Dauphiné as well, but if you saw how aggressive he was on the final day of Dauphiné, SIVAKOV could be the man that flies under the radar in terms of GC for this team. I know we're looking at Bernal and Carapaz, but seriously, SIVAKOV is next level. Mark my words, coming of age ride. This rider goes under the radar without anybody really realizing. CASTROVIEJO is one of those guys that happens to be in cycling without anybody really realizing, because to be honest, he's not the most exciting rider, he's not the most outstanding rider, but he's a really strong teammate. He's been European time trial champion and everything, but CASTROVIEJO has earned his place in this team. He's been with INEOS at now I think 2 Tour de France's, and he's been pretty good. Let's not forget, back at Tour de l'Ain, it was CASTROVIEJO who was holding on instead of Froome and Thomas. So that just proves CASTROVIEJO is almost stronger than Froome and Thomas right now. So everyone's favorite half Russian, half Costa Rican rider. After all the drama surrounding the move, it felt like AMADOR moving teams was in the headlines for a long time as part of the extremely bizarre transfer season for Team INEOS. AMADOR is a really useful teammate. We saw that with Movistar. He's one of the guys, one of the best teammates in the world. And he was with Carapaz at the Giro last year. AMADOR is a solid pick. I would pick AMADOR over Froome, Thomas. Gegenhardt, anyone. Amador's a really good rider, underrated, criminally underrated, is Andrey Amador. However, because of that 0 point, does that mean that Carapaz and Amador, them going together, is gonna mean that we should be focusing more on Carapaz as a favourite instead of Bernal? Because this Carapaz attack might be more plausible than we think. But at the end of the day, Amador still speaks Spanish. Bernal speaks Spanish. It's a match made in heaven. The rising star of the classics turned mountain goat Dylan van Baarle. Who'd have thought that he would be one of the stars of the Tour de France? Well, Van Baarle did this last year, the big broad shoulders, almost in the style of Stefan Kruijswijk. But Van Baarle's been looking decent-ish. That final stage of Dauphiné, he did some weird Team INEOS glitching attack, which seemed okay, and he'll be useful for the windy days when Bernal, all 60 kilos of him, ends up blowing off into the wind and into the Atlantic Ocean. Best teammate in the world. Need I say anything else? This man... Oh. I'm just not going to talk about Luke Rowe. Luke Rowe deserves no discussion. I think if Luke Rowe were a colour, he'd be beige. What is Luke Rowe's strength? How has he made so many Tour de France teams? Anyway, let's just discuss the whole thing, because it seems like Jumbo have really placed pressure on INEOS now, because the INEOS long list included bigger riders, and now their short list, and well, their confirmed start list, is just Bernal, Carapaz as the leaders, and a bunch of other decent strong climbers, and Luke Rowe. So they must feel so threatened, because they were so bigging themselves up with the three trident thing with Bernal, Froome and Thomas. Even back when the route was launched, there was so much hype around that. But now Jumbo are doing the same thing, but they're doing it a lot better. Maybe that they've seen that they're going to be going for Dumoulin and Roglic, and now INEOS are going to try and go for Carapaz and Bernal. So maybe it's going to be 2v2. Froome and Thomas, maybe because they haven't had the chance to ride into form like they usually do. Froome and Thomas really good at riding Romandie and Dauphiné beforehand. This year they just had the Dauphiné, Tour de l'Ain, Occitane, but those were 3 races very, very close in succession. And now we have the Tour de France within 1 month of racing starting again. They might prefer riding into form through racing, which they haven't had because, you know, COVID-19 pandemic. Also, let's not underestimate the fact that Chris Froome is leaving. Chris Froome is ditching the team, he is packing his bags and going to Israel Startup Nation, and Thomas is getting old. Like, I can see Thomas leaving. There were rumors years ago about Thomas moving to like Trek or BMC at the time. You know, let the rumor mill begin. It's just interesting. I'm loving seeing INEOS like completely unfold before our eyes. Anyway, that's everything, but check out the stuff I do on the Cycling Day YouTube channel. There's a Tour de France preview over there where we discuss the favourites, the green jersey favourites, the routes, our predictions, everything that you need to know before the upcoming Tour de France, which starts in Nice next Saturday, which will be absolutely incredible. So watch out on that channel for more. And you know, whilst you're here, you know, stay a little bit longer. Boom. It's nice around here. Anyway, that's everything. I am still not Caleb Ewan, and farewell.